Greetings, Earthlings and Uwu. This is my review of the Razer Seiren V3 Mini. This microphone costs... Game face. This microphone costs about $60. I did buy this with my own money. If you want to check it out, I'll throw some links in the description. All of my recording settings will be listed in the doobly-doo as well as the description down below. And now let's talk about what comes in the box. What a surprise, you are going to get the microphone. You get a tiny desktop stand, a 1.2 meter USB-C to USB-A cable, and a tiny bit of documentation with a couple of stickers. Then as far as the build quality, I would say that it feels fine. It has a plastic body, a metal grill. On the front, you have an indicator light, which is white when the microphone is live or red when the microphone is muted. On the top, you have a capacitive mute button. On the rear back, you have a USB-C port to connect this to your device. On the bottom, you have a 5/8" threading to put this on a mic stand. And if you care, this device is made in China. I'm not going to read the specs to you, but I will have what I could find up on screen as well as listed in the description in case you want to pause and take a closer look at anything. Now I'm spinning around the V3 Mini to 90 degrees to show you the off-axis rejection and coloration. Continuing around to 180 degrees, this is the rear. Continuing to the second 90-degree angle, right about there, here's how it sounds. And then going around to the front of the microphone. Now let's see how this thing handles plosive rejection. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please provide pizza pronto, pals. Now I am right on top of the microphone, trying not to clip, and here is how the proximity effect sounds. Now I'm about 6 inches away with the mic pointed to the corner of my mouth, and here is how it's sounding. Now I'm 1 foot away from the Seiren V3 Mini, about 2 feet away from the Seiren V3 Mini, and finally, about 4 feet away from the Razer Seiren V3 Mini. Now I am typing on a keyboard with Gateron blue switches to see how much of my voice versus how much of the keyboard it picks up. And for the gamers, now I am clickety-clacking on the SAD W and spacebar keys. Now here is how the microphone sounds about 6 inches away from my mouth in a relatively well-treated room. And now here is how the microphone sounds about 6 inches away from my mouth in an untreated space. I'm also incredibly annoying, so I will tap on the body and grill of this microphone to see if there are any kind of resonant frequencies. Now I have the microphone on the provided desktop stand. It is sat directly on the desk in front of me, 14 to 15 inches away from my mouth, angled up as far as it can be. I did have to increase my gain from about 27% up to 65%, and here's how it sounds at this distance in this kind of configuration. Here's how it sounds sat on the desk while I'm typing on a keyboard with Gateron blue switches. Here's how it sounds typing on the same keyboard with the mic on a desk-mounted boom arm. And if I were to bump the desk, here's how much of that noise it could reject on the provided desktop stand. And here is the shock rejection of the microphone on a desk-mounted boom arm. Now let's see how the mute button is engaged, so I'll keep unmute the microphone. Unmute the microphone, unmute the microphone, and that is how the mute button functions. Did you hear a click, or was it nice and smooth? Now, like I always do, I'm going to do a quick spoken word comparison between the microphone that we're reviewing and a couple other microphones that are available, so we can hear how this stacks up against the competition and understand how it fits within the marketplace. Starting on the microphone we're reviewing, I am 6 inches off of the V3 Mini. Level is set at 27%, 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. Let's hear the first mic. First up, I am on the Samson Go Mic. I am 6 inches off. My input level is set at around 20%, recording 16-bit, 48 kilohertz. I am set on the cardioid polar pattern. This microphone costs between $30 and $40, and here is how this compares to the Razer Seiren V3 Mini. Back again on the Razer Seiren V3 Mini for a palette cleanser. Here is how it's sounding. Let's go to another one. Now I am on the original Razer Seiren Mini. I am 6 inches off. My input level is set at 50%, recording 16-bit 48 kHz. The original maxed out at 16-bit. It also has no mute button. This microphone ranges between $30 and $45 or $50. And here is how the original sounds against the new, much pinker version of the mic. Alright, I am back for another palette cleanser on the Seiren V3 Mini. Nothing has changed. Let's hear some more microphones. Next, I am on the HyperX Solocast. I am 6 inches off. My input level is set at 42%, recording 24-bit 48 kHz. This is another mic that has the capacitive mute button. This costs about $60, and here is how it compares to what I would call its direct competitor. We are almost at the midpoint of the comparison section, so here is the Seiren V3 Mini, 6 inches off, level at 27%. Let's go to another one. Now I am on the original blue Snowball. I am 6 inches off on the cardioid polar pattern. My input level is set at 42%, recording 16-bit 48 kHz. This microphone ranges between $40 and $70-ish. And here is how this outdated microphone sounds compared to something much more modern. We just passed the midpoint, and I am back on the Razer Seiren V3 Mini to clear out your ear holes. Here is how it sounds. Let's go to the next one. Now I am on the new Logitech Yeti Orb. I am 6 inches off. My input level is set at 2% on my Mac, recording 24-bit 48 kHz. All of the Blue Voice software is disengaged. This microphone costs about $70-ish, and here is how this compares to the Razer Seiren V3 Mini. Let's go back and do some more comparisons. I think I lied before. Now we have passed the midpoint. I am back on the Seiren V3 so you can hear how this sounds. Let's go to the next one. Now I am on the Rode NT USB Mini. I am 6 inches off. I have all of the HyperX processing turned off. My input level is set at 23% or 19 decibels, 24-bit 48 kHz. This microphone costs about $100, and here is how it compares to the Razer. Back on the Razer Seiren V3 Mini, what a huge shocker. Here is how it's sounding. Nothing has changed. Check the lower third. Let's hear another one. Now I am on the Logitech Blue Yeti Nano, 6 inches off. My input level is set at 24%, recording 24-bit 48 kHz. I made sure that all the Blue Voice processing is disengaged. This microphone costs about $100. And here is how it compares against the V3 Mini. We have 2 more microphones to listen to, so this is your penultimate palette cleanser on the Seiren V3 Mini. Here is how it sounds. Let's go to the second to last mic. Now I am on the Earthworks SR117, which is a handheld condenser mic. I am 6 inches off. My gain on the 18i20 is set at 3 o'clock, recording 24-bit 48 kHz. This is a very flat microphone, so I'm including it as a baseline so we can hear the tonal character of the Razer really come through. This microphone goes for about $200, and here is how it sounds compared to the Razer. And we have 1 more microphone to go. You know what it's going to be. Here is your final palette cleanser on the Seiren V3 Mini. Let's go to the last mic, right? And finally, I am on the Neumann U87 Ai. I am 6 inches off. The gain on the 18i20 is set at about 11 o'clock, recording 24-bit 48 kHz, cardioid polar pattern, no pad and no filters engaged. This microphone costs about $3,700, so this is not a fair comparison, but this is meant to be a control from video to video, and that is it. Let's go ahead and go to the music test. suck and smell like butts, and nobody likes your stupid face, not even your mom. Did it come across juvenile? Perhaps, but those are the harshest words that I was willing to say because this is a family channel. If you're watching this and you think it's about you, perhaps it is. You are a stinky, stinky butt. And you stink like butts too. Take that. Let's passive aggressive much? Let's go to the conclusion. Alright, the Seiren V3 Mini is very similar to the original Seiren Mini, but now it has better conversion and a capacitive mute button. And first up as far as pros is the really nice implementation of the capacitive mute button. There is no popping or clicking when you engage that. I just think they did a fantastic job there. I also didn't notice any kind of resonant frequencies when I tapped on the microphone, which is a great thing because that's going to cause fewer issues when you bump the desk, bump the microphone, or bump the cable. I like that they improve the conversion from 16-bit up to 24-bit 96 kilohertz. And as far as microphones go, I guess this is relatively affordable considering what you're getting. Then as far as cons, the first issue I have is the lack of headphone port. I always enjoy having zero latency monitoring because that allows me to hear if I'm clipping, if I'm popping. It just helps you have better microphone technique, so I don't like that that's not included. Also, the provided stand doesn't have much in terms of movement or tilt, so if you are using this and it's sat on the desk, there's likely not going to be enough movement to tilt the microphone and point it at your mouth. At best, it's going to be pointed directly at your chest, and that is not what you want. And when the microphone is on the desktop stand, the shock rejection is subpar. And now, what are my overall thoughts and opinions of the V3 Mini? As far as the overall sound, I would classify this as more of a V-shaped sounding microphone. It does seem to have a bit of heft and support in the low end, but it's not overpowering. Then in the mid section, it seems to pull a bit of that out. It is a bit recessed. That makes the mid sound really clear and open, and it avoids any kind of nasal frequencies or sounds. And then we have quite an exaggerated treble region, which makes this sound very bright, very exciting, but in some cases it can sound a little bit harsh, a little bit sharp, and a little bit sibilant. On the electric guitar, it's fine, but it is far from amazing. I just think the upper frequency boost is a bit too much, and when I got to the upper end of the guitar, it really started to become piercing and sharp and unpleasant to listen to. On the acoustic guitar, it may initially sound really exciting because of the boost in the upper frequencies, but again, I think that boost may be a little bit too much here. It sounds a little bit too top-heavy, and it's not going to be my first pick, but in a pinch, I suppose it could work for this instrument. For singing vocals, everything that I've said holds true. You get a bit of weight in the low end. The mids are more recessed, so you don't have that mid-forward punchiness, but you also avoid that nasal sound. And then you have that bright top end, which can offer a bit of a sheen, but I found that it sounded a bit on the sharp side. And finally, for spoken word, I don't think there's much more to say, but you are getting some support in the low end, the mids are recessed, and then you get that exaggerated top end. When your voice isn't competing with anything else, I think the boost in the upper end can be a bit much. I think many people will like it because this is kind of what a lot of people go for. Get a bit of a boost in the low end, boost the top end, leave the mids alone or scoop the mids. I think a lot of people will like that, but I think the boost can be a bit much. And to wrap up, would I recommend the Razer Seiren V3 Mini? Kind of. This price point just gets more and more competitive by the day, but when we compare this to the original Seiren Mini, I think it is a nice upgrade. They upgraded the converter, so now we're getting 24-bit up to 96 kilohertz, but my favorite addition is the addition of the capacitive mute button, and it is really nicely integrated. If you have the original Seiren Mini, I do not think you need to upgrade. You're not getting a groundbreaking change to the sound quality. If you are just on a super tight budget and you want a plug-and-play USB microphone and you don't care about the mute button, I think the Samson Go Mic is still an insanely good offer at $30 to $40, and I would probably pick that over the Seiren Mini. If you absolutely need a capacitive mute button on your microphone, then it's going to be between the Razer Seiren V3 Mini and the HyperX Solocast, and the selection there is really going to come down to your tonal preferences because they sound so vastly different. The Razer Seiren Mini is V-shaped, the Solocast has much more mids to it. And lastly, if you desperately need and cannot live without any kind of DSP processing like a noise gate and EQ, then that is where the Yeti Orb comes into play. But if we are basing it solely on the raw sound of the microphone, I think the Yeti Orb is the worst. So the reason I'm saying I only kind of recommend it is it really comes down to the feature set that you need in your microphone around this price point, whether you just want a plug-and-play microphone with a couple of polar patterns, whether you need that capacitive mute button, or whether you need some kind of DSP processing. So it's going to come down to what you need, and then it's going to come down to what your tonal preference is. Do you like the more V-shaped and brighter sound of the Razer, or do you want more mids from the Solocast? Okay, I think that's it. If you found this video fun, interesting, or helpful, go and give me a thumbs up. Hated it, big ol' thumbs down. Want more videos, subscribe. Huge thank you to the members of this channel for their financial support. Their support allows me to buy this gear to make these reviews for you, so thank you to them, and thank you to you for coming by and watching and listening. I love you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa, boop.